Namaste, everybody. Welcome back to Ripples in the Sand, the podcast brought to you by the folks at Drifting Sands Haibun. Here we invite Haibun poets to both read and discuss their poetry and give us their thoughts on the craft of writing Haibun or Tanka prose, which, as you know, is prose with a haiku or a tanka. This is your host, Sangeeta Kalarikal. But first, to our regular listeners, a mighty thank you so much for supporting us. Hope you have subscribed to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell. Please like, love, comment, share, and spread the word of haikai poetry to your friends. Mostly, please comment because that makes a lot of difference because of how these internet algorithms work. Today, it is my honor to bring to you our guest who is from the snow belt in northern Ohio. Her tanka and related forms have appeared in numerous online journals and print publications. She received a Pushcart nomination for her Haibun in Modern Haiku in 2009, and she is currently the Tanka Prose editor for Contemporary Haibun Online. When she isn't busy with work and grandchildren, she enjoys walking in the woods with her husband and three dogs, and pretty much, I'm sure, where she gets a lot of inspiration for her beautiful poetry. Folks, please welcome Tish Davis. Hi, Tish. Welcome to Ripples in the Sand. It is such an honor to have you here. So, today, for our listeners, you have a fantastic sequence laid out for us. And that is something. Is there something that you would like to tell us about it before we get into the reading part?
Sure, I'd love to. And thank you for inviting me. I'm very flattered. In this sequence that I'm about to read, I have put these poems, which are a combination of Haibun and Tanka prose, in what I'm calling a chronological order of my life. So, for example, in the first poem I'm going to read, I am 7 years old. And as the poems I'm going to read progress, I'm obviously getting older as each poem comes and goes. So I'm trying to link them, just to kind of give a snapshot of what I'm about and what I've experienced and things I enjoy. And I'm looking forward to reading them.
Oh,
So
so
thank you
we're
again for
going
the
on a
invite.
journey, autobiographical journey almost, right?
Yes, almost.
Ah, fantastic. So, the first poem you have for us is Abracadabra, which was first published in Contemporary Haibun Online in September 2009. Uh, is there any background that you would like our listeners to know about before they hear
Sure.
your Haibun?
I would love to give the background. When I was a child, there was a TV show on that had a magic clown, and the magic clown's name was Zovella. And we were addicted to that TV show. So, in this first poem I'm going to read, my mother is not home, and my father is getting ready to leave for work. And he is reminding us to go upstairs to our aunt's for breakfast after the show is over. And you can find the Magic Clown on YouTube in black and white, but it was really a hot show back in the 50s. And one of the treats of this show is if you bought Bonomo Turkish taffy and saved the wrapper and sent them into the show, you got prizes in the mail. So,
Okay.
so again, this poem is starting out where I am 7 and my sister is about 3.5.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and start reading it then.
Yes, please.
So the title is Abracadabra. The teapot is whistling in the apartment upstairs. As I tie the last string on my sister's shoe, Father says, "It's okay. We can finish watching the magic clown before going up to our aunt's for breakfast." Opening his lunch pail, he places yesterday's apple back in the bowl. Then he empties his pocket change on the counter like he always does when he comes home from work. He says we can have all the nickels for Turkish taffy, plus an extra 20 cents each to order the magic kit. He reminds us not to throw away the wrappers. Breaking waves. Our sandcastle disappears. That is the end of the
Wow.
first poem.
Wow. The sinew at the end really hits one deep. Breaking waves, our sandcastle disappears, and the connection with the magic. Oh my God, this is beautiful. I feel that the coup is so important in a haibun. Uh, but you're more of a Tanka prose person, right? Have you
I
been
started
writing
out with
Tanka prose for
Haibun.
long?
I started out with Haibun after my mother passed away. I was really
Uh,
going through a grieving period, and I
uh-huh,
came across short poetry, and then I ended up on Jane Reichold's workshop team, Aha Poetry, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I made all kind of mistakes. But it was a
uh-huh,
great introduction, and eventually Ray Rasmussen invited me to join his workshop. So I
uh-huh.
started out totally inexperienced with both Haibun and Tanka prose. But what this poem is significant for me from a memory standpoint is we had no idea on that day, that it would be the last time we would ever be seeing our father alive again. So
Oh,
breaking waves, our sandcastle disappears can have a double meaning. It can have a meaning, because of the funding of the candy with the money he left on the counter, and it can have a double meaning because he basically never
yeah,
came back home.
yeah. Oh my goodness. So that is a great segue into your next poem, is it
Yes,
not? The Apple
yes,
Seller.
definitely. So the next
Would you like
poem
to
is a
read
Tonka
that to us
prose.
first?
Yes, yes. And it's called The Apple Seller. And I spent years on this poem, just so you know. And the
Oh,
version I'm going to read appeared in Contemporary Haibun online in the last issue. So
uh-huh.
let me go ahead and read The Apple Seller for you.
Yes, please.
Deep in this darkness, the tick of my wind-up clock, the apple seller's horse clip-clopping down my red brick street. Once again, I'm about to run up the stairs of the covered front porch of my childhood home when the only ghosts were the dandelion clocks my sister and I mud-glued in between the slate gray boards. Two dwellings shared the three black numerals centered on the weathered porch post. Our grandmother bought this place for her two oldest sons. How was she to know that while one family would take root and never leave this harbor town, the children of the other would be split up and sent to live in a distant city? Mother is sick and has been away for a very long time. She's back in the hospital where parents go when they hear sounds and see things that aren't really there. She says she misses the garden, our father turning the dirt by hand on our side of the narrow backyard. She misses the chestnut mare and the apple seller in his red and black checkered shirt, holding on to the reins while calling out to customers. In that morning darkness, our father rummaging through our closet, looking for his hunting rifle, and then standing silently in between our twin beds. Finally, before kissing us goodbye, his whisper so clear even now, "I'm not going to work today." And then that daily reminder to make sure my 5-year-old sister is awake and dressed so we're on time for breakfast with our aunt and cousins who live upstairs. Crimson in shades of self-inflicted. My uncle calling out, crying out after finding our father in his car. The horse whinnies. The apple seller calms her. Hush, hush. He always knows I ask him to wait while I run inside to look for nickels. In the dream, he's waiting to see if this time I open the other door. Not yet scattered by creatures we don't know. Apple blossoms in a bowl on my bedstand. And that is the conclusion of The Apple Cellar.
Oh
So,
my
unfortunately,
God.
if you haven't surmised already, my father took his own life. He
Yes.
had a hard time dealing with our mother being hospitalized again
Yeah.
for mental illness.
Oh
So,
my
um,
gosh.
it took
This
it took
this
a long
this
time for me to write this.
this this poem is so difficult even for me to hear it. Uh, so the, the first time I read it, I was shocked into silence and at a loss for words, which that rarely happens to me, loss for words. But uh, this is also in terms of uh, as a poem itself, it's so beautiful. Uh, the Tanka, all the Tanka in this piece carries the narrative, if I can surmise that. And the piece, the opening Tanka is so musical and alliterative lines, deep in this darkness. Oh my God. And then it comes up the Tanka with the crimson in shades of self inflicted. That's such a womp on your heart, isn't it? Uh,
Thank you so
so,
much. I what is interesting is this is like back in the 60s. There really was an apple seller that came down the street with his horse and buggy selling apples and calling out to customers. And I can
what
still
a.
remember the horse clip clopping on the bricks.
Mm,
So one day when I was having a hard time falling asleep, I had the old fashioned tick tock clock on my nightstand.
hmm.
And I thought, that reminds me of the apple seller. So that's where the inspiration for the opening Tonka came from, is an actual old-fashioned alarm clock tick-tocking on my nightstand, which kind of trigger
So
that probably helped trigger this whole piece. But
right,
that
right.
was
It
where this
must have
part
been
came
so.
from.
Yeah, it must have been
But
very
thank you for
difficult
your
to write it,
comments.
but it's so beautifully written, so.
Yeah, it
Um,
took years.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I'm going to read a poem next, um, which has to do with what happened after our father basically passed away, self
Okay,
inflicted. Our mother
okay.
was in a mental institution. And, in addition to my sister, I also had two brothers, but they were
Hmm.
like 1 and 3 and were already living with our aunts who lived really far away.
Hmm.
So the next poem I'm going to read talks about when my sister and I also went to live with relatives. So
Okay,
we were basically taken out of our comfort zone. We knew our relatives, but knowing them and living with them are two different things. So if this is a two-part Tonka prose, and it's called
uh-huh.
Riding Bareback.
Okay, please.
Bang caps! Cowboys hiding behind the hedgerow, the giveaway scent from a rapidly fired red roll. Bang caps in rolls for repeating pistols. The white gate swings open. We chase our boy cousins. They run back into the house and upstairs to their room. After threading a bedspread through the rail of the top bunk, they drop behind the lookout and keep their cap guns low. We Indian girls, wearing real feather headbands handmade by our aunt, reload behind a closet door. Where we live now, the beds don't bunk. At grandmother's house, no guns allowed. Redirecting the moon, that black stallion on her polished table, raising itself up on its hind legs. The hands on the mantel clock are not yet in their morning place. Even the feathers in our headbands must be still. Pinching the blinds, only a moth back near the yellow bare bulb over her back porch. My sister and I take turns running our fingertips along our secret strip of red caps. Behind what shadowed hill is the villain hiding? Under whose side of the bed? On what kind of horse will our hero show? And that is the
Oh,
end of that one.
oh,
And
so,
this last
so
line
beautiful.
always breaks me up because for years, anytime
Yeah.
I saw a man in a uh, black and red checkered hunting hat, I always thought it was my father.
Oh,
So I know
Oh,
our hero coming back to us, but it just didn't
oh,
happen.
oh,
But the other
Tish.
interesting part of this, to put some humor on a sad story, is my aunt was really the fun aunt. So that day when we were playing with the cap guns and
Yeah,
cowboys and
yeah,
Indians,
yeah.
my cousin technically got shot. So she put ketchup on her. No parent would do that today in today's crazy world, but back then we just thought it was so cool that our cousin was the one that got ketchup on her because she was the one that was hit by whatever we were, cap gun or whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah, so there's a fun memory associated with this very sad story.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I can
So,
still visualize this day. I can visualize the time playing, at our aunt's house, and I can also visualize moving some of Grandma's stuff around because we didn't like how quiet we had to
uh,
be there. Take care of
oh.
that black stallion on her polished table. We'll fix you. But yeah,
That's fantastic. This is like a different kind of photography, isn't it? I mean, you
yes,
have clicked it with words, but then also painted some deeper memories to it. So
yeah.
before
I'm
we go
very
ahead,
fond of this piece.
yeah,
I'm sorry. What did you say?
is I was just wondering, before we go ahead, we can talk a little bit about technique in riding bareback. Because the technique is so unique. And first thing is, I please let me share that the opening two tanka, which share the same first line, I think that itself is a fantastic technique. Bang caps are the same first lines. Oh, it's beautiful. But there's also
Yeah,
one
and
more thing, isn't it?
that's not my technique. I've seen that technique used before, but here you're correct. It was very appropriate since we were making so
Yes.
much noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
thank you.
Exactly. So, was there another thing in this um, Tanka prose that relates to technique?
Actually, what was intentional here is the technique of two different sound levels. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why there's a number one and a number two to show that they're different. So number
Mm-hmm.
one is intentionally loud, and
Mm-hmm.
number two, a grandmother's house, is intentionally
Yeah.
softer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Um,
very clear
so
too.
that, yeah.
It. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting to me that after, I can't tell you how many years, I'm going to guess 40 years, 50 years, I can still place myself in on this day. That's it.
Wow.
The playing cap guns part with our cousins was really fun, given all that had happened to us up until that point. So,
And
but
not
thank
to
you for the
speak of
compliments.
ketchup.
Yes, and today parents would not let their kids come back to someone's house if the host family put ketchup on their child, pretending it was real blood. Because with all the violence in today, that would not be funny anymore or appropriate.
No, it would not. It
But
would
back
not.
then, it was a hoot. Plus, it was our aunt,
Yeah.
so who was going to tell on her? Nobody else knew.
So, a quick question. What, in your opinion, is the difference between a haibun and tanka prose? Besides that one has a haiku or senyu and the other one has a tanka. Besides that.
When I first started writing Haibun, a lot of times when I got one of my multiple rejections, there
Hmm.
was a reminder that the prose needed to be terse and the
Hmm.
haiku needed to lift and shift. I don't hear
Hmm.
that anymore. I think that was just whatever state folks learning Haibun was the mantra of the time. Because
Mm.
I've gotten Haibun accepted without that style of writing. Where
Mm.
with the Tanka are little songs. It has a long
Right.
history of being song-like. And I'll put a plug in now while we're talking about this. Pat Prime wrote this beautiful Tanka prose called White and Red. And I
Uh-huh.
wrote an article about it called The Sound of the Song.
Yeah.
And it's on Contemporary Haibun Online's in the resource section.
I'll
And
put a
I
link
also
to
talked
it.
about it last year when I gave a presentation for the Tanka Society of America. It is
Oh,
an incredibly well executed piece, which is great for learning.
okay.
So I
Yeah, I'll
recommend that
have a link
reading.
about it in our notes
Oh,
when we
that's great
upload.
because
Yeah,
um, Pat was very polished from day number one, and it's a fantastic piece. So thank you so much for including a link.
yeah. So, so the next poem you have for us is "Marked with a Bee," which is a very dear Tanka
Oh, you know what?
prose.
It's chenille. I don't think you have chenille because I had a locked copy.
Okay, okay.
So I think
Yeah,
I
you'd
might have
like to.
sent you chenille, but it wouldn't open because we needed the password and I couldn't
Yes,
remember it.
that's right. That's right. Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, no
I'll
worries. No
send you this
worries.
copy later. But
Okay, so
yeah,
it's no problem. No problem. So, so the next poem is Chanel that you
yes.
have for
And
us. Would you like to say a
this
little
is
bit
also
about
based
it?
on childhood. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Okay. I was wondering if you'd like to say anything about it before
Yes,
you
yes,
read it. Yeah,
definitely.
great.
It's also based on a childhood experience. Um, we when we were young, it, most of the girls had bride dolls on their bed. Our grandmothers would either buy us a bride doll already outfitted, or crochet, or otherwise make a bride doll outfit. So I had
Mm,
a bride doll on my bed as decoration, and before going to bed at night, I had take her off the bed and put her on the dresser. Um,
mm.
and to me, we're looking at that now. That certainly was imprinting for a life of getting married when you grew up. Given that this is all back in the 50s when the ladies on Donna Reed and those type of shows wear dresses during the day while they were doing the dishes. But anyway,
Okay.
so this is a combination of the times, but it's
Uh-huh.
also has a sadder aspect to it, which is some of the I want violence is not the right word, but I can't think of another word. When my mother and father were arguing, my mother had horrible mental illness, and when they
Yeah.
would start arguing, things started breaking, like dishes. Once the
Oh,
window broke, so you know, I would basically open up my invisible book, which I kept under my
yes.
pillow, and go off
Yeah.
into a different world. So that's what this
World.
piece is about. So I'll go ahead and I'll read it now.
Okay. Yes, please.
And by the way,
Thank you.
Chenille is the name of the horse.
Ah,
Chenille,
okay. Yes.
tract housing, every nightlight on at 8. Before pulling down the covers, I give my bride doll a break from her routine in case she wants to stop smiling. Her pearly gown and veil are draped across the white crocheted square just moved from my bed to the dresser. Wearing only her slip and ruffled knickers, she sits with her back against the mirror while I adjust the Venetian blinds so she can wash her face in the evening light. The storybook, black, hardbound, and heavy, is under my pillow. I prop it up, turning the pages, trying to remember where I left off. But it doesn't matter. There's a white horse with wings in every chapter, and his name is always Chenille. I read out loud so we can both hear. Soon the harsh voices fade. The occasional sound of broken glass is a barn cat knocking over a jar of honey. The doll and I ride bareback, climbing up and away from the rooftop silhouette. My hands wrap around her waist, hers gently hold on to the reins. Pinned into my yellow hair is her wedding veil. The folds of delicate netting flow out and back, changing like clouds. Only the moon shines through them. Morning, the Venetian blinds also waiting for permission.
Oh,
And that's
so
the end of that one.
beautiful, Tish. Oh
But
my
I really did
God.
have a doll named, I really did have a doll. I really did have an, I had an imaginary book under my pillow
Oh,
probably for years, maybe into partial
oh,
adulthood. I don't remember. But
oh, I can only imagine all the stories you had in your book because that's all
I had
coming
an
from you.
imaginary big brother also. His name was Carrie.
Oh,
And about maybe 2 years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, this is very depressing. Carry, Kerry, is could also be care, Care,
Ah,
wanting someone to
yeah.
care for you. And
Oh my
that broke me up for
God.
about 2 weeks when I
Yeah, it's
remembered
breaking
that.
my heart hearing
Yeah.
that,
But
about the little girl.
it sure was fun to have the imaginary stories and to be able to disappear with the bride doll. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so
Yeah. I
there's
actually have seen, I think I remember seeing a bride doll. It's in an, one of these bed and breakfast places, where they
oh,
have, yeah, I've seen one.
yeah, that was the big thing when we were young. We all had, whether it was a purchased wedding dress for the doll or our grandmother would crochet one.
Oh
You
boy.
made your bed and then you put the bride doll on the bed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So imprinting.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Getting you ready for
Getting you ready
what
for
you're
life of
supposed to do.
what you're
What you're
supposed to do,
supposed to
right?
do.
Just like Donna
Yes.
Reed on TV and all the other
Oh
women that
my
from that era
gosh.
on
Yes.
television. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh goodness, goodness gracious.
Now the next poem
Alrighty.
takes us way into the future. Probably
Yes.
probably 7 years ago when my grandson was born.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
called Mark with a B.
Yeah. You want to tell us a little bit about the background?
Yeah,
I will have a link later, but
oh,
then,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, I was babysitting my grandson one night while my son and his wife went out to dinner, and he was my second grandson. My first grandson at that time was probably 5.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I had to get him settled down for the night, the baby. So they had a rocking chair in their bedroom. So I rocked him to sleep, and this this is called Marked with a B for several reasons, and I'll explain as we go along, or probably toward the end. But I'm going to go ahead and
Okay.
start reading Marked with the
Yes,
B
please.
now.
Yeah.
If you can visualize me rocking a baby in a kid's room in a rocking chair.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Curved wood, to and fro rhythms. My grandson lifts another flap on the board book. Baby animals. I bring my lips together and make their sounds. He delights in touching the textures, wiry whiskers, soft fur, down feathers. Oh, how each open window's treasure must feel against fingers still so new. The white pom-pom yarn used for the bunny's tail is his favorite. The bunny on the cardboard page, still waiting for me to imitate its cry. My grandson, a Momo twin, and the only one to make it to term, has fallen asleep on my lap with one of his little hands wrapped around my index finger. I rock him, and listen to him breathe. Was he holding his brother's hand when his brother passed? Rocking in this chair, what's connecting this curved wood I cannot see. Something stronger holds me holding my grandson. And that's the end of that one.
Oh, so beautiful.
So my daughter-in-law was pregnant with Momo twins. They are twins that
Uh,
share a same placenta. And
yes.
if they hadn't split, they would have been Siamese twins.
Okay.
So one of them died in utero.
Oh,
So,
this
but
uh, again, it tugs at your heart.
yeah. So
And I like the connection of the curved wood of the rocking chair with
yes.
connections.
Well, it took me forever to finish this piece, and I mean forever. First of all, it needed a title, and I could not come up with a title. And then it needed the closing tanka. I could not come up with the closing tanka. Everything I tried was just a bomb. And then one day
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, wait a minute, Alex was marked with a B. Pat a cake, that nursery
Yeah,
rhyme. He
yeah,
was meant to be born. He was marked with a B. His
yeah.
twin was not marked with a B. That's why he wasn't born.
Oh,
Then I
oh
thought,
my
well, who marked
God.
him with a B? God marked him with a B. So rocking in
Mm-hmm.
this chair, what's connecting the curved wood I cannot see. Something stronger is holding me, holding my grandson. It's God. So
Okay.
once I made
Yeah.
that connection, that's how this piece finally fell in place. But it took
Uh-huh.
forever.
Wow.
And I'm actually
Yeah.
really glad how it turned out because it has a great
It's
personal meaning to me,
yes,
and it's all
it
true.
does. It does.
So,
Yeah.
but
And
thank you.
it speaks even to people who are agnostic, even, it's just so deep, this connections. It's
Yeah,
very beautifully done. Very beautifully
yeah.
done.
Today, my grandson. I'm trying to think if he's. I think he's 7. He
Hmm.
can beat me at chess every time. He beats me at chess. I do not try to let him win. He's just that good. But anyway, so that's that poem.
Oh, wow. So, talking about Tanka prose, because I cannot see this as a haibun, and you are so right about the musicality in Tanka prose versus a little bit more terse nature of a haibun.
Yeah, this is a
So,
Tonka prose. This is not a Haibun. It's a
yes,
Tonka prose.
no, yes, it is, and it is absolutely clear how musical this is. When I read it as well as when I hear it, it's very beautifully
Thank
done.
you.
So, as an editor, what do you look for in a tanka prose? For example, is the
Ideally,
title important, and
yeah,
all those? Yeah.
ideally, I look for the sound of the song,
Hmm.
but sometimes the sound of the song isn't that loud, but the story is so engaging, it
Mm.
kind of compensates. If we're not rhyming every other word, not that anyone has to, but sometimes the writing is just so good that if it doesn't have a bunch of poetic technique in it, it's still very pleasing to hear when read aloud. So if
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure,
Uh-huh.
I try to read the poet's piece out loud before I say yes or no.
Okay. Okay. So, I have another question, connecting to that one with when you spoke about rhyming and everything. What do you feel about a tanka prose where instead of prose, you have something like a sonnet or some other, or villanelle, say, some other form of poetry, which again has a lot of music, right? And then you have the tanka, which creates the, say, volta or such. What do you feel about such? Uh,
I think it's
uh,
possible. I've never received one like that. My
okay.
only concern is the sonnet, has the unrhymed iambic pentameter.
Yes.
So if it was going to be a sonnet, how would that fit in with the closing or wherever the poet decided to place the tanka?
Tanka. Mm. Right. I mean,
But
it's
I mean,
it's one
there's
of
nothing
those
wrong with
things. Yeah.
experiment. Look at Mark with the bee. There's nothing wrong with experimentation. It might just take a while to get it to work.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
But I'm not opposed to
That's true.
creativity. Actually, contemporary Haibun online actually encourages creativity and seeing what
Mm.
poets are trying to do now with the form. And in the case of
Yeah.
Haibun, that has changed tremendously since I was writing Haibun.
Yes.
Back then it was basically one paragraph of prose, one haiku, and now
Yeah.
there's all kinds of variations, and there's
Yes.
some more emotion in there that might have been frowned on earlier. So it's
Hmm.
very delightful these days to read both.
Okay.
Even though
Well,
I'm not the editor for Haibun, but it's very delightful to read the contributors' work. That's a
yes.
good question. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So,
So my
we will
last
round
poem
up
is called Above
our,
the. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, no, no, please.
I've got one more to read. Did
Yes.
you want to go ahead and
Please
finish
go
what you're
ahead.
going to say? Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say. We were going to round up with about the three line.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, no, not at
All
all.
right. I'm gonna go ahead and read this one now. Then it's called Above the Tree Line, and this is based in Colorado.
Mm.
Climbing the mountain's trail, loose rocks on a tilted ledge, this thin air, hooves clacking on root and stone. In single file, we're on the trail above my in law's ranch in the Rockies. A horse's grunt interrupts the dirge. No one speaks. A small procession We follow my mother-in-law through a grove of golden aspen, but my steed already knows the way to the family's sacred place. I spot the cairn when we emerge from the tree line. Distant mountains fire, their aspen glow. A gentle wind carries the chanting. Over peak colors, we let go the reins for the bamboo urn, for the simple pull of a wooden peg. Descending in this thin air on the horses my husband will someday lead. And that concludes Above the Tree Line. And this
So
one is
beautiful. Thank
about
you.
a comment my husband's grandmother made one day
Uh-huh.
when there was a funeral. They always have cremations for most of their family members,
Oh,
and they have a secret
okay.
place in the Rocky Mountains where they go and they scatter the ashes. But the way it was presented to me
Uh-huh.
was only family knows where it is. And I don't think Dan and I were
I
married at that
see.
time,
I
so it
see.
really hurt my feelings. Um,
Oh,
but in Above the
yeah.
Tree Line,
Yeah.
another point I want to make is that story where great grandma said, this is only for relatives, only for family. That's the only thing that's true about this story. Everything else is made up. My in-laws do not have a ranch in the Rockies. My mother-in-law had polio. She could never ride a horse. Um, so the point I want to make with this is don't be shy about making stuff up, because sometimes to get the poetic aspect of it, you have to kind of stretch the truth a little bit. And
Yeah.
this is a totally stretched truth. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I actually like it very much. It's one of my personal
Yeah.
favorites,
Yes.
probably
Yeah.
because great grandma said only relatives can go.
Yeah. That
I'm
is.
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no, no. I did actually. Sorry about that. So I was just
Oh,
thinking,
that's okay.
that's such a harsh thing to say and a harsh thing to carry. So that harsh message has been carried through such a musical piece. And that is the point of this whole thing. It doesn't, it's based in a autobiographical moment or a piece of memory, but doesn't mean anything. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't uh, add aspects of story to it, right? It's
Exactly.
I
Actually,
that's my takeaway.
I wrote a commentary on this, which is also in the resource section of Contemporary Haibun online, and it's called
Hmm.
Quilting Prose. I don't know if
Yes.
you ever made a quilt, but my grandmother's had, and they're in layers. So the
Mm.
whole point of the story is sometimes one of the layers might be stretching the truth because you need that to make the
Yes.
song. And that's what I did
Yes.
here. Plus, I don't know if you've ever been in the Rocky Mountains when it's aspen are
Yes, I
in
have.
bloom, but they really do glow. It's just stunning.
Yes, they do.
But
Yes,
yeah.
I was going
But
to say
boy, I
that
cry sometimes, and I
I
think
know
about my husband
exactly what
leading
you're
the
talking
way.
about. Mm, mm.
You live in Denver for a while?
We
I forget
lived
what you
in
told me.
different places yeah, no, in Fort Collins and then in Colorado Springs. But
Oh, Fort
yes,
Collins.
Rockies, I know what you were talking about when you say the
Yeah,
aspen glow. It's something
yeah.
you need to
It's
experience it almost,
yeah.
not
You
just
have to
see it
experience
in
it.
pictures. That's
The
yes.
distant mountains
So
really do fire when the aspen
yes,
glow.
yes, yes, yes. So this
But
poem was first published in Contemporary Haibun Online, December 2020, right?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
thank
This
you.
is yeah. And what you've given us so much to think uh, about the writing and the craft. Thank you so much, Tish, for
Oh, thank
coming
you for
on.
inviting me. I am so flattered, and I'm hoping that this will also motivate listeners who are interested to attempt, both crafts, Haibun and Tanka prose, and
Yes.
also to log on to Contemporary Haibun online and read some of the articles in the resource section. There are
Yes.
some very meaningful and educational articles there. Um, I don't want to only talk about mine. There's a lot of good news out there to read. And you never have to feel like you have to tell it the exact truth. You can always stretch the truth for poetry's sake.
Yes,
So,
yes, that's a poetic license we're given when we start
poetic
writing
license,
poetry.
that's right. But this
But
has been a
thank you so
delightful
much.
experience for
Actually,
me.
the honor is ours that you came on and you talked about you read not only read your work but also you talked about the craft, and this is so encouraging for people who are just starting to write, and even people who have been writing uh, Tanka or Tanka prose. I mean, there are different aspects to it which they may not even have thought about. So, thank you so very much, Tish,
You're
for
welcome.
coming
And,
in
and
on.
thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
I'm so grateful to Tish for spending her time reading her poignant poetry and sharing her views with us. You will find more of her work in several online journals. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ripples in the Sand. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and share on social media. The music in this episode is by Richard Grant. This podcast is produced by Richard Grant. This is Sangeeta Kalarikal signing off.